Hello aspirants. In this video, we are going to discuss Israel-Palestine relations and the issues involved. The question is framed, and this is based on the end of December 2016 UN Security Council resolution which was passed. So the question is, the recent UN Security Council resolution condemning Israeli settlement activity in the occupied territories of the West Bank and East Jerusalem will further strengthen the prospects of the two-state solution. Critically examined. So the statement is giving a positive viewpoint that the two-state solution would be strengthened. That prospects that would happen would be strengthened. So two-state solution is the idea of Israel and Palestine, two states formed and peacefully coexisting. So that is the two-state solution expected. So what has recently happened is UN Security Council, UNSC, passed a resolution in December 2016, resolution 2334. So this was passed because US decided to abstain. Till date, it has been since 1967. We'll see what is the history too. In 1967, there was a war, Israel-Palestine war. In that, it had occupied territories. That's why these are called occupied territories. West Bank and East Jerusalem are occupied territories occupied in this war. So they actually belong to Palestine. So that way, so this occupied territories should be formed as a separate state. So this resolutions post 1967, all resolutions passed at UN were voted by US favoring Israel. So if it had to reject the resolution because it was going against Israel, it would reject, and it had the veto power. So in UN Security Council, there are 15 members, 5 are permanent members, US being one of them, and has the veto power. So veto power means if it says no, it would not happen. So if all 14 states, there are 15 states, 5 in the UN Security Council, there are 15 members, 5 are permanent, 10 are non-permanent, elected every 2 years. So out of these 15, even if one, US has said no, and all other 14 say yes, then also that resolution could not be passed. That is what veto power is. Each of the 5 members has individual veto power. Means anything which even any one of them does not like cannot be done. So that is the power, veto power that they have in UN. So now in December 2016, UN Security Council proposed a resolution, resolution 2334, for which US decided that it would abstain from voting. So this was the last days of Barack Obama presidency also. So he took this step, means all 14 members of UN Security Council voted in favor of this resolution condemning the Israeli settlement activity in occupied territories of West Bank and East Jerusalem, and only US was the one who abstained from voting. So this was a step taken. So Israel has been putting pressure on US even presently for this resolution too. Israel put pressure on Egypt. So it was one of the sponsoring countries, but it withdrew from the resolution. So that way, even in US, the Israeli pressure groups are there. They are powerful in business and they put pressure on the political party, the government in power, to make sure that the policies which US adopts are pro-Israel. So this is regarding the present resolution. So it's a setback for Israel. So earlier a resolution which was passed in 2011, which could not be passed actually because US had vetoed. So this was at the time of Arab Spring too. At that time, the US stand was that if such a resolution is passed against Israel, then Israel will become more assertive and a peaceful solution between Israel and Palestine would become much more difficult. So what is not happening is that without a resolution too, Israel is trying to take over regions from West Bank and East Jerusalem, which should actually belong to Palestine. They are the areas, the land which will be forming the Palestinian state. So without condemnation also, the two-state solution is far off, and with condemnation, at that time US had a viewpoint that peaceful resolution of the crisis would not take place. Anyway, so the history, the 1967 war was the turning point. This was the time when Israel seized West Bank, East Jerusalem and Gaza Strip, which were parts of Palestine. So that is the point. Now, since then, UN Security Council has been passing resolutions condemning Israeli act. In 1967, the first resolution passed, 242. Resolution 242, this was passed unanimously. Even US voted condemning the act of Israel occupying these territories. But post this first resolution, every other resolution in US has always favored Israel. That's why nothing could happen till date. Also, another point to be noted is UN has always condemned Israeli activity. It has called it a violation of even Geneva Convention. Specifically, the fourth Geneva Convention is violated by Israel undertaking permanent settlements, construction of settlements on occupied land. So these are Geneva Conventions. There are 4 Geneva Conventions. So these are for times of war. So first one is regarding improving the conditions of sick and injured soldiers in the field. Then second is regarding the improving the conditions of shipwrecked sailors and military forces who are at sea. Third is regarding treatment of prisoners of war. And fourth is regarding treatment of civilians during times of wars. So that this is regarding 4th Geneva Convention, treatment of civilians. So how the civilians are treated. So this West Bank and East Jerusalem, they are called occupied land. So Palestine is the land. This land actually belongs to Palestine, and Israel is constructing settlements on their land. So that is how the civilians will be suffering because of this. So it's a clear violation of 4th Geneva Convention is highlighted by UN quite often. Then further about the history about Israel-Palestine relation and the issues involved and how they have been resolved. So Oslo Accords play a critical role. But before going to that, we'll look at a history before that too. So this is regarding, so here you can see the present map of Israel and how it is. So this is West Bank and this is Jerusalem. So Jerusalem is the capital of this region. So for Israel, it is Tel Aviv, from where it functions. But Jerusalem is said to be the capital which it wants for itself, and the Jerusalem capital would also be divided. So East and West Jerusalem. So East Jerusalem will belong to, this Palestine, and West Jerusalem would belong to Israel. So that is what is proposed but not accepted by the two sides. That's why no solution comes forth. So this another region is this Gaza Strip. So presently Palestinians lie in this region. And Palestine has been given de facto nation status because in 2012 UN recognized Palestine as a non-member observer state. So it is an observer state. Palestine is not a member of United Nations, but it is an observer nation. So at least it has been recognized as a nation, not as a member. So this is the region which belongs to Palestine. Now looking at the Israel-Palestine timeline, if you look at it, the history, this region belonged to Israeli tribe. So Israelites conquered and occupied this region and had settled here. It was in 63 BC that the Romans captured Jerusalem. So it became part of the Roman Empire. So that is why later it was renamed as Palestine. So this was in 63 BC, before Christ. Then in 70 AD, Jewish rebellion took place. Romans destroyed Jerusalem and the entire Jew population dispersed around the world. So this, in Roman Empire, the revolt which took place resulted in Jews spreading all over the world, leaving their homeland. Then in 313 AD, Roman Emperor Constantine declared Christianity as the official religion here. So Jewish religion is the religion they follow, but Christianity became the official religion here in this period, 313 AD. Then in 570 AD, Prophet Muhammad was born in Mecca. So that was the Islam would be promoted later. So we'll see that too. So then the region came under the control of Arabs also, because after the Roman Empire, this region was conquered by Arabs. So during this time, the Zionist movement had initiated. So this was in late 1800s. So Zionist movement is a movement of the Jews that they want to go back to their promised homeland. So this is that large number of Jews population, they started migrating to Palestine. So this was their homeland which they want to occupy again. So this started in 1800s and has been going on. So immigration of Jews to Palestine began and it went on till 1914, the First World War II. So around 1 lakh acres of land in Palestine was purchased by philanthropists and Zionists abroad. So they would purchase land in Palestine and started settling down. Jews started settling down here. So this is how the Zionist movement initiated. And then we see a reaction to this too. So in 1922, Britain After the First World War ended, the Britain was given the mandate over Palestine. So we saw after the First World War, the League of Nations, which was the precursor to United Nations. This League of Nations, which was a failure because it could not bring in peace. Second World War took place, and after the Second World War, United Nations was formed. So this League of Nations gave mandate of various regions. So after the war ended, these regions had to be taken over, distributed amongst colonial powers to oversee them. So it was felt that after the war, actually colonial powers are getting strengthened by getting more regions under them. So they were called mandates, that this is your mandate. So Palestine mandate was given to Britain in 1922. So at that time, the Arabs inhabiting in this region became uneasy because Jewish immigration increased after that. And when Hitler started persecuting Jews, if between 1928 to 1937, that was the time of Second World War II, which initiated after that. So Jewish population in Palestine increased drastically. So this was there. Post this, you see the Jewish settlements gradually increasing. So that was in 1947. This was the Palestinian land and how the Jews have settled in here. So settlements here you can see. In 1947, the partition plan was decided, and this was how Palestine and Jewish were partitioned. So this Jerusalem came under UN administration. So this was post Second World War. So this was decided. Then gradually Israeli land kept on increasing. Palestinians were restricted further, and in 1967 this was the status that this is Palestinian land and this became Israeli occupied region. So Israel became part of Jews became part of this region, and they had settled down where permanently. And then in 1967 Israel took over these regions. So West Bank and East Jerusalem have been occupied territories where they are trying to settle down Jews. So this you can see that the settlements which are taking place presently. So this region is further been getting bifurcated and complicated. So this you can see the pre-1967 boundary. So what is being sought is the 1967 war was an error and the pre-1967 status should be brought back. So this you can see, this is called the green line too. So this is the partition which is considered, dividing line which is considered to decide what would be Palestine and what would be Israel. But then Israel wants to take in more territory in this West Bank region. You can see the Palestine controlled region is bifurcated and reducing. So this is there, you can see 2012 Israeli controlled, Palestine controlled regions are shown here. Gaza Strip, you can see this is Gaza Strip. It was captured from Egypt. So this is Egypt, Sinai Peninsula here. This Gaza Strip was captured from Egypt. In 2005, Israel pulled out its troops and now it is under the Palestinians. Palestinians have settled here. But even then, there was an all-Palestinian government functioning in Gaza. Then this is Sinai Peninsula, which belonged to Egypt, and it was captured from Egypt during the 1967 war by Israel, but it was returned back after the 1979 peace accord, the Oslo Accord, which was signed. So this went back. Then Golan Heights here. This was captured again by Israel during this 1967 war from Syria. So Syria is a neighboring country here. This is Jordan, the country here, Syria, another country here, Egypt. So this region is connected. Israel, Egypt have this boundary. So this was Golan Heights captured from Syria. And this was not returned also. 2/3 of this Golan Heights still remains under Israeli occupation. But it is not internationally recognized as legal. But Israel still controls it. Then West Bank and East Jerusalem. So these were West Bank and East Jerusalem were part of Jordan. So they were captured from Jordan. Israel still continues to hold most of the West Bank. This West Bank name also comes as the bank of the river. So from Golan Heights, this till Dead Sea here. You can see there is a river flowing. It's not shown in this map, but this river which forms the boundary here too, this is River Jordan, which gives the name to this country Jordan here too. And this is the west bank of the River Jordan. So that's why it's so named. So Israel still continues to occupy most of the West Bank. It supports settlements on occupied land. So that is why this Israeli settlements here have resulted in complicating the matter. So peace accord has been signed. Israel and Jordan signed a peace accord in 1994, but the territory still remains under the control of Israel. Now, one thing you should remember is this Gaza Strip said to be captured from Egypt and West Bank captured from Jordan by Israel in 1967 is true. But this Gaza and West Bank are Palestinian regions, and Egypt and Jordan respectively were holding these territories post 1948 only, after the Second World War. So that is the case. So they were having these regions under their control. Even Jordan's occupation of West Bank was called illegal, even by the Arab League. So that is the case. So of course, these are Palestinian regions only, which were tried to be captured by these adjoining countries also. And now Israel has them under their control. Then regarding the Arab-Israeli War of 1948 too, suppose this occupation took place. So the cause of this war was of course foundation of Israel, that Israel was formed as an independent country. The countries which were involved in this war were Egypt, Syria, Jordan, Lebanon and Iraq. So Lebanon you can see is the country here, a neighbor of Israel again. So and Iraq were involved. So there was 7 lakh Palestinian Arabs who became refugees because of this war. The borders of the Jewish state expanded, so of course it favored Israel. And in 1949, an armistice agreement was signed between Israel and these countries. So this ended the Arab-Israeli war, and the lines between Israel and West Bank were finalized. Then next is the Suez Crisis of 1956. So this is also called Second Arab-Israel War of 1956. So here this is the Suez Canal, which lies in Egypt. So this is an important transit route through which the ships would pass. International trade route would be majorly through this. So Britain had major interest in having Suez Canal open for all, and it was kept so. But then Egypt had its own grievances. So post Second World War, for reconstruction, Egypt was planning to build this Aswan Dam on River Nile. So for this, US and Britain financial support could not be achieved, because of which these differences, Egypt was also getting support from USSR. So this was also the time of Cold War. So USSR provided it with arms, and with this assertiveness, it decided to send its troops and block Suez Canal. As a response to this, Britain got together with France and Israel here, and they decided to send their forces here. Israel sent its forces to Suez Canal and easily defeated Egypt and took control of Suez Canal. This was internationally condemned. Later, Suez Canal was returned to Egypt, but again, it was a loss of face too. So here you can see this was the Suez Crisis of 1956. Then the 1967 Israel War, 6-day war as it is called. So this was between June 5 and June 10 of 1967. Israel and Egypt, and along with Jordan and Syria. So all these neighboring countries were involved in this war. Israel fought against these countries, and outcome was complete victory of Israel. It took effective control of Gaza Strip, the Sinai Peninsula from Egypt, even the West Bank from Jordan. So all came under the control. Golan Heights from Syria. So all 3 states which were involved here, Egypt, Jordan and Syria, could not win, actually lost their territories. So this was the 1967 6-day war. So from 1949 to 67, you can see how it changed. So even Egypt, Sinai Peninsula, Jordan, see, you can see this is the armistice line, means this was the line which was decided as the line, 1949 armistice line. So this was the region where Palestinians were settled. This was Jordan controlled, this was Egypt controlled. As I said, 1949, these countries, neighboring countries controlled them, and remaining was to be Israel. But then in 1967, Israel got control of Gaza Strip, Israel got control of West Bank, Israel got control of Golan Heights and even Sinai Peninsula. So this was the result of the 1967 6-day war. So this is a quick victory of Israel took place here. And then in 1973, there was another war, Yom Kippur War as it is called. So Yom Kippur is the holiest day of Judaism, the religion of Jews. So this day they have complete fasting and prayers which take place in the synagogue throughout the day. And even this was the time when the month of Ramzan, the holy month of Muslims, was also ongoing, and a war was declared. This was war declared by Egypt and Syria against Israel. So they wanted to regain their lost territories. So Gaza Strip and West Bank were actually Palestinian regions, but they had also lost their own territories in 1967 war. Sinai Peninsula, which belonged to Egypt itself, which had gone to Israel, and also Golan Heights of Syria. So that was the reason why they initiated this war, and they were able to give an equal fight to Israel, though Israel tried to counter them, but then Israel could not make any further developments here. UN peace was brokered, and later peace deals which took place showed that Israel also had to come to terms. Even Saudi Arabia completely supported these Arab nations, and it had put an oil embargo. So even it put pressure on United States by putting an oil embargo. So that's why even the gas prices that time had skyrocketed. Fuel shortages of 1976 during this time had taken place. So that is why Israel had to come to terms. So then the 1979 Camp David Accords initiated. So this was a peace deal signed by Israel and Egypt. So Egypt became the first Arab state to recognize Israel, and Israel returned Sinai Peninsula to Egypt. So here peace came forth, but then Anwar Sadat, the president of Egypt, who had recognized Israel and had signed this peace deal, was assassinated by Islamic extremists in 1981, 2 years later. So this was Camp David Accord. Then after that came the Intifadas. The first Intifada, which was the Palestinian uprising against Israeli occupation of West Bank and Gaza. So till now we were seeing other nations, adjoining nations fighting against Israel. Now Palestinian people within this region, which were occupied by Palestine now, Gaza Strip and West Bank, uprising against the Israeli forces. So this first suicide attack in Israel started, and since then many people lost their lives, majorly in Palestinians and also Israelis. So this first Intifada went on from 1987 to 1990. Then next came the Oslo Accords of 1993. So these were significant, though did not last long. So this was in Oslo. Oslo is the capital of Norway, where secret negotiations took place to bring to terms the two entities, that is Israel and Palestine. So Palestinian Liberation Organization was the organization representing Palestinians, and Israel accepted them as representatives of Palestinians. And this was a peace deal signed between the two, PLO and Israel. And this was brokered by then US President Bill Clinton. So this was one significant step taken, because neither Israelis were recognizing Palestinians and their right to existence, nor Palestinians were recognizing Israel and their right to existence. This was because if you look at history, recent history was that Palestinian land was occupied by Israelis. And if you look at history far back, then originally, long ago, 1000 BC, at that time it was Jewish land, which was later, now presently occupied by Palestinians. So did not come up and capture, but it was over the centuries that it had become Palestinian land. So that is the whole thing, because Israelis, Jews themselves had fled from that region. So now in this Oslo Accord, PLO recognized Israel's right to existence and denounced violence. It said we would not use violence, and Israel also recognized PLO as a representative of Palestinians, and that the two states would be formed. The two-state solution as such, a step towards that was taken in this Oslo Accord. But then this peace could not last long. The second Intifada, revolution of Palestinians started. This lasted from 2000 to 2005. Peace could not be brought in. It became quite violent. Many suicide bombings were done, and Israeli crackdown on Gaza Strip and West Bank also became stronger and resulted in large number of deaths. Then the two political organizations which we have, one is also called an armed organization, so it's having its armed wing also. So this is Hamas and Fatah. So Hamas is an extremist organization, and Fatah is considered as moderates. So these Hamas is supported by Iran and Syria, and Fatah is supported by the Western nations and many other Arab states. Most of them support Fatah. So this Hamas does not recognize Israel, and Fatah wants peace with Israel. And presently the status is that Fatah is the one who has won and is in power in West Bank, governing West Bank, and Hamas is in power in Gaza Strip. So Gaza Strip suffers more because they are the extremists, and Israel clamped down on them, as we see earlier too in Indian history. We have seen moderates, extremists, how they are responded to. So Israel comes down heavily on them, and Gaza Strip many a times is blockade is also put, which results in them not having any support, any outside support possible. So complete economic blockades are also put on Gaza Strip here. This controls Gaza, and this controls parts of West Bank which are not under Israeli occupation. So we have seen West Bank regions, a lot of it has come under Israeli control now, and settlements. So these are the settlements of West Bank which we were talking of. And this is the West Bank barrier, the wall apartheid wall also, which the Palestinians call it, which Israel is building. So it says we are trying to protect Israelis from Palestinian terrorism. So number of attacks, suicide bombings had increased. So this was the solution which Israel brought forth. So this is the wall. You can see a huge road. So it's not just wall as such, but it's a huge barrier which has been decided to be put. This is the Israel, would be the Israeli side and Palestinian side. So the wall is declared as illegal by all international countries, including UN, has called it illegal. You can see it's called illegal. It's an unlawful act of annexation because West Bank completely belongs to Palestine. So in West Bank, they have having occupations too, plus building this wall also to divide Israeli side and Palestinian side. You can see this is the map of Israel. So here you can see. So this is the map. So West Bank, these are the areas under Palestinian control. So wall would be built, it's built actually in this region in such a way that Israeli territory and Palestinian territory could be divided. So because of this wall, many Palestinians come on the other side of the wall. So they are also suffering. They are excluded from the Palestinian region. So of course, there's an indirect way to occupy land also because they'll have to leave. So such issues have arose because of this wall which Israel is building. This it started since 2000, the second Intifada. When it started, they realized how violent it can become, and so they have decided to end violence, stop terrorism coming from Palestinian into Israel through this wall. So this is when much of this wall is on the green line, but some part of the wall also enters into this region, because of which the opposition comes forth. Then looking at our present case too, so we were at this aspect that UN resolutions have been passed earlier too, and presently also one resolution was passed. This is regarding the Oslo Accords, which we discussed in the image. So this was the agreement between Israel and Palestinian Liberation Organization. So these Oslo Accords were finalized. So the first one was in 1993, second one also took place in 1995. Then the peace process, so this was basically a peace process aimed at achieving peace treaty based on UN resolution of 242 and 238, means right of Palestinians to self-determination and two-state theory being accepted. So secret negotiations were held. Palestinian Authority was formed. So Palestinian Liberation Organization was recognized as representative of Palestinians, and Palestinian Authority was created which will self-govern these parts of West Bank and Gaza Strip. So this was also acknowledged by Israel. But then Palestinian state was not formed. Self-governing authority was formed. PLO was recognized. That is it. So Israel has been continuously bringing its Jewish people to settle in this region, in West Bank also. So that is the occupation, Israeli occupation taking place. Another thing, this significance of this UN Security Council Resolution 2334 presently is not just that Israel in UN Security Council a resolution has been passed against Israel, because that is fine, but what will be the consequences of this would be on ICC. What would happen in ICC? Because there's a case before International Criminal Court. So this International Criminal Court headquartered in The Hague, Netherlands, is the court established by Rome Statute in 1998. So this looks into all cases, international cases of genocide or war crimes. All these are looked into by this International Criminal Court. So it acts against nations, against individuals. So many cases which have been initiated. So it started functioning from around 2002, but many cases which it has taken up are cases from Africa. So African nations are condemning it, saying that this is Western imperialism being put in again, that only African countries are once indulging in genocide and war crimes, and the war crimes by other Western powers are ignored. So Israel is one another only country against which ICC has initiated proceedings, but it is only for one aspect, about the 2014 bombing of Gaza. So this bombing of Gaza which took place is one which is investigated into by ICC. It has said that will not look into the entire case of Israeli occupation of this region, because UN Security Council has not supported this aspect yet. So now with this resolution passed, ICC also gets a stand to look into the whole issue and adjudicate on the matter. So that is also Israeli concern, that what would be the response of ICC post this resolution. So you can see Jan 2015 ICC opened preliminary investigation into this 2014 bombing of Gaza and into this illegal settlements also which are taking place. So that is restricted to this. So you can see the judge here, ICC prosecutor here, said that we cannot move forward to a full criminal investigation without substantial political clarity from the UN Security Council. So this clarity has come now. So because Palestine has also been recognized as a nation too, so Israel criminality can be investigated into with UN Security Council resolution. So that is the case. Even International Court of Justice. So this was ICC, International Criminal Court. Then you have International Court of Justice. So this is the court of United Nations. So there is a difference between the two too. International Court of Justice is actually the court which looks into nations, functioning of the nations, issues of the nations. It takes action against them. So this International Court of Justice has also said that apartheid wall, which has been built by Israel in the West Bank, is completely illegal and it should be brought down. So this is the status of court rulings also, both ICC and ICJ. Both are located in The Hague in Netherlands. This is formed in 1946 when United Nations was formed, and this is a recent one. And this looks into states, member states cases, and this can look into individual cases also, in cases of genocide, war crimes, crimes against humanity, like that. So this is the whole issue which we can understand till date. The important points have been discussed. In future, what is the future? Now it is US President Donald Trump has come to power, who has completely decided and clarified that Israel would be completely supported, and this resolution which has been passed by UN Security Council would be undone by him most probably. He has already vowed to do that. So even the UN Secretary General presently, Antonio Guterres, he has said that he would send UN support mission to work towards a two-state solution. So of course the international community wants to work towards a two-state solution so that peace comes in and this conflict ends. Because as long as the conflict continues, it would be a warlike situation of uncertainty, of rockets and bombings and suicide bombings taking place and attacks taking place on both sides and casualties, of course. So to end this, a peaceful resolution should be brought in. An internationally recognized peaceful resolution is that West Bank and Gaza Strip should be formed as separate country, one country as such, to forming together as one country, Palestine. So that's what is expected, but how far would Israel agree to this is the question, because from 1967 to date, this is the change in the territory which has happened in West Bank. So that is the point. So if eventually it takes over the whole region, increasing its illegal occupation, then there will be no West Bank with Palestinians and nothing to be handed over. So this is the whole gist of the conflict. So Israel keep the borders that were set in 1967. So this is the conflict of territory. If they want to keep that border, and Palestine wants Israeli troops to withdraw what was taken over in 1967, because Gaza Strip and West Bank were taken over in 1967. Then refugees of 1948. It says that we are willing to negotiate for repatriation, and refugees of 1967. So this was the Arab-Israel war, and this was the Six-Day War. So here refugees of 1967, they say we are not willing to negotiate and repatriate them, but then Palestine wants all refugees should be repatriated and compensated for. Annexation of Israeli settlements. So this is there, it wants to annex Israeli settlements, and this Palestine wants Israeli settlements to be withdrawn, and they are building Israeli settlements. And West and East Jerusalem as capital, and Palestine wants East Jerusalem as its capital. So capital, Israel wants the whole of Jerusalem as its complete capital. So it does not want to divide the capital as such. It's an old city, a historical city which is of significance to all three religions: Judaism, Christianity and Islam. So these all three religions are also interconnected in the sense that Christianity, the prophet of Judaism is Moses, prophet of Christianity was Jesus, and Prophet of Islam, Prophet Muhammad. All three are the same lineage. So they are considered as successors. Islam recognizes all three prophets and all the prophets preceding them too. So there are a number of prophets who came before Prophet Muhammad. Prophet Muhammad is recognized as the last prophet. So Jesus is recognized as a prophet and revered by Muslims, and also same for Moses as well. So that is the case. So Jerusalem was the ancient city which is linked to all three religions. So that is why Israel wants the entire Jerusalem, which is historically important for it completely, to stay under its control. So that is it. Thank you.